This video and its contents are under the protection of the Fair Use Act. Hi, it's Sylvie and I'm back with a new video. I apologize for the general lack of content. Depression, OCD compulsions, and a lot of catching up at doctor's appointments has left me feeling quite exhausted. Today, I'm back with a new rewrite analysis video. This video isn't really much of a Rainbow High rewrite as much as it is just a criticism of one of Rainbow High's quote-unquote friendship dynamics and specifically why it's bad. I know that I was going to do a different topic, but this is an actual problem and I noticed that it needs to be addressed now. Specifically, I will be discussing Aiden, Avery, and Ainsley's relationship. While watching the web series, I noticed a lot of unhealthy aspects of the trio's friendship. Now, I don't really have a problem with shows, kid shows especially, showing unhealthy relationships. Having negative friendships is very real, and having a show that displays what these friendships are and how to escape that dynamic is so important. However, the show didn't actually seem to be addressing these unhealthy aspects. In fact, they kind of seem to be treating this relationship like it's normal. This is why I will be covering what makes their friendship so unhealthy, why this is confusing and unhealthy for viewers, and what I would personally change about it. Also, I'm not a professional psychologist, so my actual knowledge of friendships on unhealthy boundaries is pretty limited, and I might get a lot of stuff wrong. I base all this info off of professional documents posted in the mental health community and personal experience. Also, this is more of an analysis of how the show is viewing this and the advertising of this. I'm not trying to criticize the writers or trying to say that the writers are purposely trying to make this harmful. I also might miss some information or other important bad moments from the show, and there's a lot to cover, so please let me know if I missed anything. Let's start with the problems, and boy, there are a lot of them. Firstly, it's important to know the basics of what makes a friendship unhealthy. According to multiple websites, the main signs of an unhealthy relationship are broken boundaries, jealousy, lack of communication, one-sidedness, and lack of safety to self-express. Now, some of these aspects you have seen in several places in the show. In Season 1, Episode 1, we see the trio's introduction. They are already walking together and address themselves as the A's, and seem to use their upperclassmen privileges to suggest that they are in control and manipulate anyone under them. This feels especially behavior controlling. It's one thing to have a passion and lead newer students to help them feel adjusted, but the way Aiden says it, and I quote, "And when the A's are in charge, you never know what will happen," Season 1, Episode 1, timestamp 205. It just sounds like they like to be the boss of the younger students and just throw unpredictability into the other students' lives when they have no right to do so. This seems to be promoting superiority and control in their friendship. And maybe this part is just me, but it feels creepy for them to be known as the A's, as if they're its only defining trait, addressing them as one entity rather than the individuals they are. What if one person in the group wants to change their name to something that isn't A? What happens when someone wants to join their group who doesn't have an A name? This reeks of sorority house expectations and is an example to the lack of safety to self-express. Maybe if they all agreed on being the A's and were still able to have their own lives, it might be cute, but combined with everything else, I don't know, it just feels really creepy. More examples of this abusive power dynamic can be seen in Season 1, Episode 3 and 4, where they essentially use their influence to manipulate Poppy and the rest of the group into helping with their party. Or remember that episode where they do that weird activity where they force the main group into doing a bunch of puzzles? Like, these are just older students, right? Teacher's assistants at best. Who gave them permission to do this? I mean, yes, I know if you watch the episode, then Avery says that the teacher of their dormer class sent them to do this, but why would the teacher send other students? The teacher should be the one leading activities, also real activities, not trauma bonding escape rooms. And if the teacher is using their power to make other students do the teaching job for them, then that in itself is power abuse. It also explains why the trio thinks they can force others to change their schedule and do what they want if the teacher is also manipulating them. But anyway, what all of these examples show is that their friendship is based off being popular and using that popularity to make other students do stuff for them. A real friendship should be based off of mutual connection, not power. Another example of invalidation is with Season 1, Episode 14, where Aiden presents a lot of anxiety around the upcoming football game and meeting everyone's expectations. Ruby tries to tell Avery that Aiden has anxiety and could use a friend's help, but Avery claims that she already knows and that he shouldn't worry because Avery thinks that he already has skill. This is outright gaslighting and invalidation. Aiden's feelings are valid, and if he feels nervous about the football game despite his abilities, then he's right, and nobody should tell him that he's not feeling that. This shows that the relationship, at least between Avery and Aiden, is not really emotionally safe. Also, might I point out in this scene that Avery says, "Whoa, am I getting a so not impressed vibe from you? Aren't you, like, impressed with what's hanging on my shelves?" Which had nothing to do with what Ruby was even doing. Ruby didn't even say anything to her, which kind of shows that maybe Avery has a lot of anxiety about being a perfectionist or being seen as the perfect role model, and maybe overanalyzes other people's reactions to make sure she's constantly meeting that self-goal. But moving on to examples of lack of communication, this is especially shown in the Season 2, Episode 10, Sleepover Society episode. Avery expresses confusion on Ainsley's sudden silence, but instead of asking Ainsley why she's not talking to her, she just talks to Aiden, expressing her anger because, quote, "She doesn't tell me anything and I thought we were best friends," timestamp 039. This is bad because Avery uses a "you" statement instead of an "I" statement, and it also kind of is trying to say that the friendship is always based off of being together and talking, which really most friendships don't. First off, it's Ainsley's business with her decisions and education, and a relationship doesn't always have to be based on talking, and breaks with friendships are normal and okay. However, I can see how it would be confusing for Avery that Ainsley has just given her the cold shoulder and not set a boundary or communicated that she clearly wants to be left alone or that she needs a break. The communication seems kind of weird on both ends. This also leads to Aiden feeling like it's his responsibility to mend the group and fix the friendship and poor communication. During the sleepover session, in which the 3 sleepover girls that seem to have a healthy relationship have set up for the purposes of stress relief, Avery and Ainsley seem to be very uncomfortable with each other. Eventually, through the fun activities, Avery seems to try and communicate with Ainsley by complimenting her. Ainsley responds with caution and anger, asking Avery if she has some feedback to share. It's clear that Ainsley seems to be very sensitive to criticism. Sensitivity to criticism can come from high anxiety and even rejection-sensitive dysphoria. This gives insight about how Ainsley really feels sensitive and vulnerable, but instead of telling Avery how she feels this way, she just kind of responds with defensiveness. In a healthy relationship, needs should be communicated without this kind of severe vulnerability. To give this episode some credit, they do show the 3 sleepover girls reacting to their arguments with confusion and stress instead of just brushing off the issue. And it really does feel like this episode is trying to point out the back and forth of vulnerability, accepting criticism, efforts of communication, and defensiveness. Eventually, Avery and Ainsley do actually talk to each other using I statements. Sometimes fighting is the only way to learn how to change. I just wish the rest of the unhealthy and negative aspects of the friendship could be handled this way. I also want to point out that it seems like Ainsley struggles with feeling like she isn't enough and often compares herself to others, exhibiting jealousy of others' talents at the time during the pizza scene. Moving on to the huge part of the show that really shows their bad relationship is with the Shadow High arc. Specifically, I'm talking about Season 3, Episode 6, The Eclipse, Phase 2, and Episode 7, Out of the Shadows. In this plot, Rainbow High students visit Shadow High. Upon entering the building, Avery remarks her admiration for how she thinks Shadow High is cool. The other 2 instantly react with anger, pretending that she didn't even say that. Like, look you asshole, she wasn't trying to say that they should agree or that Shadow High should win every single Rainbow Vision competition. This kind of circles back to their whole A's dynamic and how all 3 of the friends have to think alike and how anyone who doesn't think that way will be excluded. This is very reminiscent of emotional control aspects of cults, according to the Freedom of Mind's Resource Center. Ainsley also for once tries to state her needs, telling her friends that she has something really important she wants to tell them. Avery instantly silences her, saying that she has to shut up because her needs have to wait, simply because Avery has her own anxiety that Shadow High has spies everywhere. This is completely selfish, and though I might understand if Avery is worried about spies, there's a better way this could have been communicated. A healthy way to express this concern probably would have been saying, "I hear you have something important to say," which starts by acknowledging Avery's concern and Ainsley's concern. Then maybe Avery could express her concern for Ainsley's safety, and then suggest an alternative way for them to communicate, like through text or going to a different location, instead of just completely ignoring what Ainsley was trying to say. This is a much more healthy way to communicate and acknowledges both friends' worries and concerns. Moving on to when Ainsley walks up to the stage, this is when she suddenly announces her transfer to Shadow High. Because she always seemed to feel so unconfident, and because the only time she tried to express this concern to her friends was when she was shut down, publicly was probably the only way she could felt safe enough to express this transfer. Her friends react to this with tears. Avery even says, "How could she do this to us?" as if Ainsley physically hurt her friends. Ainsley is her own individual and deserves to move to whichever school she wants to. Her friends should be happy for her and her decisions. Unless they're hateful decisions, which they're not. Avery was even there to see how Ainsley had a pattern of being distant and feeling a lack of self-confidence, and even though Ainsley says she's just going to help Rainbow Vision versus Rainbow High, which is just a mere contest, she only claims to be leaving Rainbow High as an institute, not leaving her friends or the memories she made there. And if Avery views Ainsley attending a different school out of her own decision as something hurtful, then this truly shows how individual opinions and experiences are looked down on, even controlled on in this friendship. After this announcement, Ainsley tries to friendlily interact with her friends, but they react with confusion and defensiveness to her situation. Ainsley tells them that it's the right thing for her. It's just her educational decision. At this point, Ainsley suddenly resorts to begging, saying, "Please don't hate me," which is a huge red flag. In a healthy relationship, Ainsley should feel supported in her own decision. She shouldn't need to beg for validation. The argument continues. Avery even shows at Ainsley saying that "I can't believe you're leaving us," Season 3, Episode 7, 244 timestamp, even though Ainsley said nothing about leaving the friendship, only the school. This furthers the cult abuse dynamic, specifically with Avery and Aiden being very upset at Ainsley for even just leaving the school they attend. Ainsley even tries to validate the whole Rainbow High versus Shadow High fight, saying that she does like Rainbow High as a school, Shadow High is just what fits her better. All Ainsley is asking for is validation for her own decision, and Avery and Aiden are acting like she made a horrible friendship-ending choice. The argument does continue, and this time Avery does use I statements, trying to show her confusion of Ainsley's actions. Ainsley brings up how she was actually trying to tell them earlier. This is where Aiden says, "Oh, come on, you didn't really try" at 4:21, like, actually, what the heck? This is Aiden's problem for not listening to Ainsley earlier, and yet he's placing blame on Ainsley because she wasn't trying enough, according to his bullshit standards, I guess. Simply because Aiden feels uncomfortable by being called out for not validating Ainsley's anxiety earlier. In fact, all Aiden and Avery seem to be doing in this conversation is act like they were the ones being hurt. They didn't even acknowledge Ainsley's desire to be in the right or be happy at all. The group then takes their argument to the backstage area. Ainsley says, "Why can't you just be happy for me?" And even though she says it in an angered tone, she's angry because her needs are still unmet. This is all she really wants, validation for her decision, for her own individual choice that for one moment wasn't what the A's wanted as a group. Ainsley doesn't expect for the other two to transfer to Shadow High. She doesn't even expect for things to be normal at Rainbow High. She doesn't even expect for the other two to want Shadow High to win. All she wants is validation. And how does Avery respond in this situation? By saying, "That is so unfair." Yikes. Ainsley wants acceptance for her own decision, and Avery says that's unfair. Invalidation at its finest. It's completely Ainsley's choice, her own decision. That is fair. What I think wouldn't be fair is if Ainsley stole all of the Rainbow High students' projects to use against Shadow High. Then that would be unfair, but she's not doing that. I do think the root of Avery's anxiety comes from wondering how this transfer will affect their friendship. However, this is not a good way for her to deliver that information. I think a better way she could have communicated this is by saying, "I want to support you. You deserve to be happy. However, I'm experiencing a lot of tension and anxiety about how this will affect our friendship. How do you feel about that?" This accomplishes still validation for Ainsley's side and also validates Avery's anxiety about how this will affect their relationship. But even then, Avery's concern seems more about keeping the idea of Ainsley in her life. Avery seems to more enjoy the idea of the A's, the idea of a close group who all think alike, and to be honest, she doesn't seem to respect Ainsley as an individual at all. In this argument, she clearly even refers to Ainsley as our best friend, as if Ainsley is nothing more than their friend. However, Avery does say that she needs time to process this information, and this is kind of a good example of good communication, as having a long-distance relationship plus the idea of suddenly not being as close to a friend may be shocking, but still. Avery and Aiden were not validating Ainsley's individual choice, and their fear of losing a friend came out as painting Ainsley as the villain. Well, I don't think that's the worst argument. In fact, I think it's a pretty good example of a more toxic argument. It doesn't seem to be treated that way by the actual show writers and advertisers. What makes me think that? The advertising. Specifically, I'm taking a look at the Rainbow High official Instagram. Specifically, this post about Avery leaving Rainbow High. The caption reads, "What? Ainsley is transferring to official Shadow High and Avery and Aiden didn't know?" Imagine being a fictional character and your own creators invalidate you. Like, this is totally not what happened at all. Ainsley did try and communicate and tell them that, but they completely shut her down, and this post disregards that completely. Based on this post, and also how Ainsley asked for more processing time at the end of the argument, I think they were going for a friendship breakup scene. Try and appeal to all of the audience and for people who have friends who have moved away to different schools, but unnoticed, when you combine this with all the unhealthy factors, the relationship just comes off as toxic. The argument doesn't feel balanced. It just makes me feel bad for Ainsley, and happy that she's away from Rainbow High. Regardless of who the writers are, or what their intention was, or who the social media manager was, it is a huge problem that this relationship is seen as fine in all advertisements and in even instances in the show. But why should viewers care? Why should the viewers and audience of Rainbow High care if the relationship is seen as toxic or not? Okay, so maybe the relationship isn't fully unhealthy. I just think that because of each of the characters' individual backgrounds, from Ainsley's RSD and perfectionism, to Avery's need to be validated by others, to Aiden's anxiety around being looked up to or feeling like others' friendships are his responsibility, no one here seems to be purposely abusing the others. It's just a group of scared, insecure people who unknowingly have a lot of unhealthy aspects to their relationship. That's pretty real, and a lot of people experience that. However, the real issue is that the show doesn't acknowledge this, and almost seems to present it as a normal relationship in their advertisement and how the other characters see this interaction. And I don't by any means think the show creators meant for it to be this way. And to give the show credit where it's due, the friendship does have some good moments. For example, in Season 2, Episode 1, the trio approaches Bella and each individual offers their support for her in return, saying that they're going to be there for her if she needs support. There's also the Season 2, Episode 10, Sleepover Society episode, where Avery and Ainsley are seen discussing their emotions after several incidents of a lack of communication. All throughout the show, they have pretty good representations of some healthy friendships. And I get the feeling that the A's relationship wasn't meant to be toxic. It was just kind of written that way by accident. Or maybe it was supposed to seem unhealthy from the start? I don't know, like they address some unhealthy things, but they also completely leave out others, so I have no idea what the writers were really trying to do with this friendship, but I really do hope they address it sometime. However, accident or not, the true root of the problem is how the viewers will see this. As you may have seen from my analysis, most of the episodes don't seem to be actually addressing the A's behavior. It only comes up in a few episodes. Now, Rainbow High has a huge broad audience, from kids to adults. Everyone can watch it. However, if you check out the official YouTube, the video settings are meant for kids. What this means is that they must comply with the Online Children Protection Act, and these videos will be marketed towards other kids viewing this app. Making kids content isn't as simple as just throwing a bunch of colorful items on the screen. If you're gonna market your videos to kids, then you better fucking follow the guidelines for it. When creating any children's media, it's very important to show normal, healthy relationships, and if you're gonna show toxic relationships, then you better show them being addressed and how to escape those relationships. Writing good friendships is even more crucial when you're presenting media to young, developing brains. If you have a miscommunication with the social media manager, or if you just have bad writers who write accidentally bad friendships, you better fix that shit. And for those of you saying that, oh, kids are dumb, they just like cartoons, kids won't actually copy what they see in a fake world. How does it feel being the biggest moron of children's education in the world? Kids and preteens are actually really smart and will absorb what they see represented in media. Children and preteens alike kind of depend on media to tell them what to do, how to interact with others. By not addressing Avery's invalidation, or the trio controlling younger students, or Aiden and Avery attacking Ainsley, this shows to kids that this is normally how friends work issues out. This shows that it's okay to exclude, to demand constant agreement, to invalidate, to control others. It's not. Now, the social media managers can post whatever they want, and the writers can do whatever they want. However, if you really are going to set the video settings to kids, if this is going to be your target audience, then you better know what you're doing. But there's still time. The Rainbow High writers can salvage this and show how the group can actually learn from their toxic aspects, but they need to start addressing all of these relationship aspects in the show and in their promotional content right now. You're probably wondering, oh, if you think this friendship is just so bad and the writers just messed up so much, then how would you change it? Well, to be honest, I'm not even completely sure where I'm going to start. There's just so many layers to this friendship, and I kind of don't even know if I want to unpack that. But I do have a small general idea of what to change, so I'll just give a basic list right now until I can think of a good idea for a rewrite video. Well, for first of all, what I would change would be starting the relationship off as unhealthy, but actually have other characters react to this and maybe call some of them out for it. Like maybe Ruby actually calls Avery out and says, "Hey, why would you invalidate Aiden like that?" And actually over the course of the show have the trio learn and grow from their decisions. Like maybe they actually realize their unhealthy choices and have them show pointing this out and how they learn to have empathy and respect for each other. And maybe eventually they could show the trio being apart for once and having relationships with other people and not always being perfect, not always being part of the A's. And that's probably the basic idea of their character growth and character arcs. I definitely would like to flesh this out sometime, especially in a bigger video. However, I'm not really sure what else to change other than that they just become better people, so if you have any other ideas of what you would like to see in this revised friendship, then please let me know in the comments below. And that's basically all I had to say for the A's rewrite and analysis. What did you think? Did you think I was right, or did you think I was being a little too over-analytical? Whatever your opinion, I'd love to hear it in the comments, and let me know if you want more rewrite content. I actually was going to rewrite Bella's execution for Rainbow High, but then this friendship issue came up and I was like, okay, I need to address this now. But anyway, if you have any ideas of what specifically you want me to rewrite, then I will definitely make more videos on this soon. I have a ton of new doll review videos coming soon, so whatever the next video I make, I'll see you then, and thank you for watching.